The autumn rain drummed against the windows of Corner Café, a small coffee shop tucked between towering office buildings in downtown Seattle. The scent of freshly ground coffee beans mixed with cinnamon pastries, creating warmth against the cold streets outside. James Anderson sat at his usual corner table, laptop open, architectural blueprints spread across the surface. At 39, he was one of the most sought-after architects on the West Coast, known for designing innovative skyscrapers and luxury hotels that graced magazine covers. His dark hair was slightly tousled from concentration, green eyes focused intently on his work. He came to this little cafe, not because he needed to work here. His penthouse office 20 floors above had everything a successful architect could need, but because he craved normalcy. Here, surrounded by students and freelancers, he could forget about board meetings, million-dollar contracts, and the weight of expectations that came with the Anderson name. Behind the counter, Sophie Carter moved with practiced efficiency, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy bun. At 26, she had the kind of beauty that shone through exhaustion, bright blue eyes that sparkled even when running on 3 hours of sleep, and a smile that could warm the coldest Seattle morning. She'd been working at Corner Café for 2 years, ever since moving to the city with her 4-year-old daughter, Lily. Sophie's story was one of quiet resilience. She'd married young to Tom, a charming man who gradually revealed himself to be controlling and violent. The final straw came when Tom raised his hand to Lily during one of his rages. That night, Sophie packed 2 suitcases, emptied their savings, and drove through the night to Seattle with nothing but hope and determination. The transition hadn't been easy. Sophie worked 40 hours a week while taking night classes in accounting at the community college. Her days started at 5 a.m. when she'd drop Lily at childcare, work until 3 p.m., pick up Lily, help with homework, make dinner, then study until midnight. Weekends meant double shifts to afford rent on their small 1-bedroom apartment. Sophie had noticed the man in the corner booth. How could she not? He was there almost every day, always polite, always tipped well, and had a quiet presence that somehow made her feel safer. She knew he worked on building designs, judging by the blueprints, but beyond that, he was a mystery. He ordered the same thing every time: black coffee, no sugar, sometimes a blueberry muffin. What Sophie didn't know was that James had noticed her too. He'd seen how she always arrived 15 minutes early, how she remembered every regular customer's order, how she would quietly slip an extra cookie to the homeless man who counted quarters for coffee. He'd watched her take worried phone calls about bills during breaks, seen her shoulders tense when looking at the stack of bills in her apron pocket. James found himself looking forward to their brief interaction. When she asked, "The usual?" With that warm smile, it was the most genuine moment of his day. In his world of calculated conversations and strategic networking, Sophie's straightforward kindness was like cool water in a desert. It was a Thursday evening in late October when everything changed. The cafe was nearly empty when Sophie's manager, Rick, emerged from the back office with a stern expression. "Sophie, we need to talk," Rick said, his voice carrying across the quiet cafe. Sophie's face immediately tensed. She approached him with careful steps, knowing this conversation would be overheard. "I got a call from your landlord today," Rick said, not bothering to lower his voice. "He said your rent's 2 weeks late. Again." Sophie's cheeks flushed red. "Rick, can we please talk about this in private?" "No, Sophie, we can't. This is affecting your work. You've been distracted, called in sick twice this month, and now I find out you can't even pay your basic bill." James looked up from his laptop, attention caught by the tension. He could see Sophie's hands trembling as she twisted her apron. "I'm working extra shifts," Sophie said quietly. "I picked up 4 doubles this week. I just need a little more time." "Time doesn't pay rent, Sophie, and it doesn't pay my insurance when you're too stressed to focus and spill hot coffee on customers." "That happened once, and Look," Rick interrupted. "I like you, but I can't have an employee whose personal life is falling apart. If you can't get your rent situation figured out by Monday, I'm going to have to let you go." Sophie's face went pale. "Rick, please, this job is all I have. Lily and we need this." "Then figure it out," Rick said, disappearing into the back office. Sophie stood frozen in the middle of the cafe, fighting back tears. She walked to the counter, grabbed her purse, and began counting crumpled bills, a 20, a few tens, some singles. Even from his table, James could see it wasn't enough. The sight of her defeat hit James like a physical blow. He thought about his father's words. The real measure of a man is what he builds with his hands and his heart. Robert Anderson had never walked past someone in need. James closed his laptop and approached the counter. "Excuse me," he said gently. Sophie looked up, quickly wiping her eyes. "Oh, hi. I'm sorry, we're closing soon. Can I get you anything to go?" "Actually," James said, reaching for his wallet, "I couldn't help but overhear. How much do you need for rent?" Sophie blinked, taken aback. "I'm sorry, what?" "Your rent. How much are you short?" Sophie's face flushed with embarrassment. "Oh, no, sir, I couldn't possibly—" "It's not charity," James said calmly. "Think of it as an investment in someone who shows up every day, remembers that I like my coffee black, and deserves a chance to keep working." Sophie stared at him, blue eyes wide. "I don't even know your name." "James," he said, extending his hand, "and you're Sophie. I've heard Rick call you that." She shook his hand tentatively. "James, this is incredibly kind, but I can't accept money from a stranger." "What if I wasn't a stranger? I've been coming here almost every day for 4 months. I know you take your break at 2:30, that you always save the last chocolate croissant for Mrs. Henderson, and that you hum when you're happy. We may not have had long conversations, but we're not strangers." Sophie was quiet for a long moment. "How much is your rent?" James asked gently. "$1,200, she whispered. "I have $800. James pulled out his wallet and counted out $400. "There, now you can keep your job and I can keep getting good coffee." Sophie stared at the money, then back at James. "I'll pay you back, every penny." "I know you will," James said with a smile, "but there's no rush." 3 weeks later, Sophie still couldn't believe what had happened. She'd been setting aside money to repay James, managing to save almost $200. James continued coming daily, and their interactions had gradually become warmer. He'd learned that Sophie was studying accounting, had moved to Seattle to escape an abusive ex-husband, and that her daughter Lily was the light of her life. Sophie learned that James was thoughtful, funny, and surprisingly down-to-earth. What Sophie still didn't know was who James really was. That changed on a rainy Friday afternoon when Sophie was running errands. She passed a construction site with a massive billboard featuring a sleek glass building. At the bottom, in elegant letters, it read, "The Madison Tower, designed by Anderson Architecture Group. James Anderson, Principal Architect." Sophie stopped dead, staring at the professional photo of a man in an expensive suit. It was James. Her James. The coffee shop James who had saved her job. But this wasn't just any James. This was James Anderson. The James Anderson. Even Sophie had heard of Anderson architecture. They'd designed half the iconic buildings in Seattle. Her mind raced through their interactions, the expensive laptop, the quality clothes, the watch that probably cost more than her car, the way he'd offered $400 so casually. When Sophie returned to work, her hands were shaking. At 6 p.m., James walked in as usual, looking exactly like he always did. Except now Sophie saw him differently. "Hey, Sophie," James said, approaching the counter. "Black coffee?" Sophie nodded, not trusting herself to speak. When she set his coffee down, she took a deep breath. "James Anderson," she said quietly. James went very still. "What?" "Anderson Architecture Group, the Madison Tower, Principal Architect." James closed his eyes briefly. Ah? That's all you have to say?" "Sophie, you're James Anderson, the James Anderson. You could probably buy this entire building without blinking. I am exactly who I've always been. I come here because this place feels real. Because you treat me like a human being, not like a bank account. Do you have any idea how rare that is? So I was your little escape? Your way of playing regular guy?" "No," James said firmly. "You were the best part of my day, every day." Sophie felt her anger wavering at the sincerity in his voice. "I need to get back to work." James nodded. "I'd like to talk more about this, when you're ready." That night, Sophie lay awake thinking about their interactions. The kindness in James's eyes when he'd helped her hadn't looked calculated. It had looked real. The next evening, James didn't come to the cafe. His empty corner table felt like a missing piece. On Monday, Sophie made a decision. She visited James's office in a prestigious downtown building. The marble lobby made her feel small in her jeans and sneakers. "I'm here to see James Anderson," she told the polished receptionist. "Do you have an appointment?" the woman asked disdainfully. "No, but I have something that belongs to him." "Mr. Anderson is very busy." "It's okay, Michelle." James appeared, dressed in an impeccable navy suit. "Sophie, I wasn't expecting you here." Sophie held out an envelope. "It's the money you gave me, all of it." James looked at the envelope but didn't take it. "You didn't have to bring it here?" "Yes, I did. I needed to see this." She gestured around the opulent space. "I needed to understand who you really are. And now that you've seen it, now I understand why you came to the cafe. You wanted to feel normal." James was quiet. "Is that so wrong?" "Number. But it's not the whole truth either. I think you came because you're lonely. All this is beautiful, but it's not warm. It's not real." James stared at her, surprised by her insight. "And I think helping me wasn't about charity. It was about connection, about mattering to someone in a way that has nothing to do with your money." "You're not wrong," James said finally. Sophie held out the envelope again. "I still want to pay you back." James took it, then handed it back. "Then take me to dinner, somewhere you choose, somewhere that matters to you. There's a little Italian place, Mama Julia's, but I should mention, I'd need to bring my daughter." "I'd love to meet Lily," James said. "I remember everything you've told me about her." Saturday night at Mama Julia's, James met 4-year-old Lily. He crouched to her level, listened to her stories, and promised to attend her tea party. Sophie watched him interact naturally with her daughter. "Why did you really come to the cafe?" Sophie asked as they shared dessert. James explained how inheriting his father's empire had left him isolated. "Everyone wants something from me. Contracts, donations, partnerships. I never knew if people liked me or my bank account. But at the cafe, you just saw me as the guy who likes black coffee. Do you know how wonderful that was?" "That must be lonely," Sophie said softly. "It is, but you treat me like a human being." Sophie understood. "When you helped me, I was angry because I thought you were pretending. But you weren't. You were showing me exactly who you are, someone who notices when people struggle and cares enough to help." Their relationship deepened over the following months. James became part of Sophie and Lily's life, attending tea parties, helping with homework, showing them genuine love that had nothing to do with his wealth. 6 months later, they married in the same corner cafe where they had met. The space was transformed with string lights and candles. Sophie's community college friends mingled with James's business associates, creating a perfect blend of their world. During their vows, James said, "You taught me that real wealth isn't measured in buildings or bank accounts. It's measured in moments like this, in the trust of a good woman, in the laughter of a little girl." Sophie replied, "You could have anyone, go anywhere, do anything. But you chose us. You chose our chaotic little life, our tiny apartment, our Saturday morning pancakes. You didn't try to change us to fit your world. You made yourself part of ours." After the ceremony, James's father told Sophie, "I was worried when James said he was marrying someone from a coffee shop, but watching him tonight, I realize he's not going through a crisis. He's coming home." The story shows how extraordinary love can grow from ordinary moments of kindness. James and Sophie found in each other what they'd both been missing: genuine connection, acceptance, and love built on seeing the person beneath the surface. Sometimes the most meaningful relationships begin with simple acts of compassion, and the person who changes your life might be sitting in the corner booth, quietly making a difference, one kind gesture at a time.